Welcome to One Word Stories. Today, my very precious guest is Caroline Ribeiro-Nelson. Caroline is based in the UK and she is the head of Free Choices. I love the name of your company, Caroline. She is a specialist in diverse mental health and well-being, and she is a huge advocate of introducing more of well-being and the mental health issues in the corporate world. Why? Because according to the statistics, 1 in 6, which is the equivalent to 84 million people across EU countries, suffer from mental health issues. And these are just the numbers before the pandemics. So during the pandemics, these numbers have changed and are rising. However, this is exactly the point with, the numbers, data, and facts. When we start talking about singular stories, it changes the picture of the situation. And that's why I'm really, really looking forward to our conversation, Caroline. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing from you also how you personally work with stories in this context and how you actually also connect this mental health issues with the diversity, equity, and inclusion. A very warm welcome.
Thank you, Joanna. It's so nice to be here.
Thank you for joining. So let us start with this really important question. What is the connection between mental health issues and the diversity, equity, and inclusion? So we start with the big question first.
Yes, the big question. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's really clear now that when we look at mental health and the experiences of women and people from diverse backgrounds, whether that's people of color, Black, brown, people that have a different sexual identity or orientation, that includes people with a disability from a different class or religion, that their experiences in the world are different because they're confronted with difficult circumstances and issues related to racism, Islamophobia, discrimination, injustice, and abuse. And these experiences have a real impact on people's mental health and well-being. And research shows that there is a direct connection between the experience of stress, trauma, and inequity on the brain, and that it actually impacts the brain, changes the brain, and can lead to depression, anxiety, and other different psychological and mental health disorders. And often we've seen mental health be put in one corner over here, being looked at separately, and issues of diversity, equity, inclusion in this corner, and not really understanding people's experiences within the context of their lived experience, whether that be historical from what's happened in the past to what they're experiencing on a daily basis. And so my focus is very much for people to understand the really deep connection between people's lived experience and the societal structures which are harmful in terms of lack of diversity, exclusion, people being exclusion, and not having equity within the society in which we live, and looking at how we can transform our cultures in a way that recognizes those harmful factors and create cultures that are going to be healthier, more equitable, inclusive, and diverse, which benefits everybody and benefits organizations and society as a whole. And we're very much seeing that being played out within corporations today as well, where they're looking more at diversity, equity, and inclusion, and mental health and well-being. But I think there's still the lack of that connection, the understanding of that connection.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because what I hear also very, very strongly is just breaking this ignorance, isn't it? Because we all know something that actually already the philosopher Averroes said, that the ignorance leads to fear, and fear leads to hate, and hate leads to violence.
Mm.
So this is also the point that if we don't address the themes, the situation is going to be even worse.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Because when it comes to people being aware and understanding the impact of their behavior and what's going on in society and the societal structures that we create and that we sustain that are harmful, people become used to it. They accept it. It's the norm. They don't question it. And when it is questioned, people will want to hold on very tight to it. They feel threatened. They feel uncomfortable. They have a sense that something's being taken away from them that they have a right to, and they often feel that I will have the dominant culture feels that I will have less if I have to give more to other people or if I have to include people. So I think it's a sense of the different factors going on. Ignorance in terms of lack of knowledge and understanding, particularly historical knowledge and understanding. We can see that history, when it comes to the treatment of women, people from the LGBT community, people with a disability, Black people in particular, in terms of slavery, the historical factors that have impacted the oppressive and harmful structures that exist today. We really need to look at that and understand the impact of that on people's lives.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, when you are addressing also these issues, of course, we need to think also about the intersectionality, so that it's not only dividing, that it's about women, Black women, maybe Black women with mental health challenges, but that all these categories play a certain role when we have a look at one concrete individual. So this intersectionality issue is also very, very important, that this person can feel also frustrated, discriminated at different layers at the same time. And when you were also addressing the historical context, I'm just recalling a short story that there was a meeting in the multicultural team online, and there were two Black people who had the same surname. So someone reacted the way, oh, so the world is small, even if you live in two completely different corners, you are relatives. And the one person said, no, actually not. It's nothing seldom in the US that people have the same name, very possible that our ancestors were slaves at the same farm or were given the same name. So this kind of sensitivity is actually missing because of this lacking knowledge.
Yeah, very much so. Because I think then we recognize the microaggression that's going on there, because people wouldn't have reacted if two people in the room had the name Smith or Jones.
Yeah.
But because they are from a different ethnic background, it's assumed that they must be related in some way. And so the microaggression, those subtle, unsubtle, indirect or direct acts that people play out that are discriminatory or offensive to people can be quite harmful when you see that that's something that people react in that way towards others. And it's really important for people to be more aware of the way that they are perceiving people from diverse backgrounds and women as well, and how their attitudes, their behavior, their beliefs have an impact on other people.
Yes, definitely. So, Caroline, how do you actually introduce this theme in the corporate world? I can imagine that it's really, really tough at the moment.
Yeah, I think that we've seen over the last 2 years the way that the corporate world have been recognizing how important it is to look at what the impact of the pandemic has had, both physically and emotionally, and in terms of how they do business and how they relate to their employees. And throughout that time, we had the Black Lives Movement, and before that, we had the Me Too movement, which really highlighted those ongoing historical issues, which play out in the inequalities that you see, particularly in the corporate world, where you're looking at leadership and representation and the decision makers and the people who have power. And within the corporate world, we see that we're looking at quotas, that we want to get more people from diverse backgrounds into leading positions and onto boards. But I think that that's something that falls down when you're only looking at representation and a tokenistic gesture, where those people are not really being included in the decision-making process or changing the structure and the culture within organizations. So for me, my work is really looking at how are you challenging the status quo and the culture within your own organizations? How are you looking at that on a fundamental level, where your ethos, your beliefs, your attitudes towards bringing people into the organization, understanding people's diverse needs and being able to promote that within the attitude and culture within your organization, that is going to enable people to feel that they belong, that they can contribute, that they're heard, that they are promoted throughout the organization, that the different diverse perspectives are used as a talent pool and innovation to grow an organization, and that people feel safe within that environment, that they're able to express their different attitudes, their experiences, their beliefs, and that they're respected, and that those beliefs are reflected in the organization's policies and procedures, for example, in their maternity leave, in people respecting their religious beliefs, people with disabilities, how are the organization transforming the organization, and how are they implementing it and connecting it with their mental health and wellbeing strategy? Are they really understanding that people do not leave their experiences of the world at the door? So what is going on outside when we're looking at social injustice, sexism, discrimination, abuse, hate, domestic violence? That's something that people bring in with them into the workplace. And sometimes it's actually perpetrated and actually replicated in the workplace. You have those same systems going on in the workplace: bullying, harassment, discrimination, sexism, lack of inclusion. And so we need to be able to recognize that, and to be able to look at a culture that is going to develop structures, policies, attitudes, and procedures that recognize people for who they are, recognize what their needs are, and implement strategies and acknowledgement for what is going on for people.
Yeah, you are also bringing the psychological, therapeutical background. And this brings me to the next question, that when you are already having the possibility to work with the people in this context, how do you actually work with stories?
Yeah, well, of course, being a psychotherapist with stories, it's really about the narrative that people share about their lives, their experiences, what goes on in their imagination. And so when I work with individuals from a psychotherapeutic perspective or within organizations, it's about listening to people's stories and respecting what their stories say about their experience in the world, the way that they are able to function within society and engage with others. And so when people are sharing their stories, for me, it's about being able to not only listen, but to empathize. Empathy is so important in being able to put away your own assumptions on what's going on for you, and to try to step into the other person's shoes and to understand what is going on another person's point of view. And without empathy, we're not able to connect. We're not able to have compassion and to understand what is going on, and to be able to work in a way that we can cooperate and that we can develop effective strategies that work for everybody. So empathy in terms of leadership is really important, working with leaders and managers and people throughout the organization to look at how they can connect better, understand their people's needs so that they can construct particular approaches and strategies and policies and ways of working within their culture that is going to work for them. And also really helping people to feel safe. Psychological safety is really important. If people feel that they're going to be judged or they're going to be penalized, then they're not going to feel able to open up about what's going on for them. They're not going to be able to trust an organization or the people around them that they're able to bring their best to work in a way that they want to express themselves. And people do not function well when they're under stress. And so being able to work with individuals in a way that they're able to talk about their experiences and their stories, and that is something that is going to be taken into account in terms of how people react to them and their needs and how the organization functions. Because if you're expecting people just to fit into your view of what you think an ideal employee is, you lose so much. You lose a lot of that talent, that innovation, the diversity of imagination, thought, experience. And so encouraging people to tell their stories in terms of their lived experience, their cultural experience, and how they engage in the world is really important.
Yeah. Yes, you have covered so many themes right now. It's really very, very empowering also to hear how important it is to have instruments to establish such an inclusive culture, but maybe not really to establish, because it sounds very, very, mechanical and top down, but really to live this culture, to be part of it. And it's also about this huge mindset and heart set change, and the policies follow.
Yeah.
So Caroline, you have shared so many ideas what can be done. Right now, what comes to my head is really, this question: how can individuals, how can your best friend, my colleague, me, myself, deal with this tough situation personally? What concretely could we actually do that we can enhance our well-being?
Yeah, definitely. So many people have been impacted in terms of their mental health and well-being due to the pandemic. And they hear about what can we do to overcome that sense of depression, anxiety, and deal with our mental health issues. And they hear about the typical things such as doing exercise, eating healthily, connecting socially with friends and family, doing hobbies, connecting with nature. I think that's very natural. A lot of people know that already. I think the question is, what holds people back? What are the barriers that stop people from engaging in those things and investing in their mental health and physical health as well? And often we can find that if people are under ongoing stress and anxiety like they have been in the pandemic, then people become demotivated. They become very apathetic and lethargic. They lose energy. And so then that sets up a vicious cycle where they do not feel able to involve themselves in any of those healthy and self-care strategies. So what's important when people find themselves in that position is to look at, what is it that's holding me back? What is it that's stopping me from engaging in taking care of myself and looking after my health? And some of that could be to do with expectations. expectations of others and what they feel you should or shouldn't be doing. Or it could be your own expectations. And these can really set up a negative dynamic where you don't feel that you can follow what you truly feel that you would want to, because it's not something that you normally do or is natural to what people expect you to do. And I think it's really important to question that and to look at what is it about their expectations that are holding me back. What is it about the way that I think and believe about a situation that is holding me back? Do I believe that this is something that fits into who I am as a person? Is it something that I'm able to do in a way that I feel I'm not going to be judged by it? Because people fear being judged. They feel that they're going to be criticized or looked at in a negative way. And so they set up a dialogue in their minds about whether they're able to do something or not. And they say, oh, I'm not really a sporty person, or I'm not into nature, that's not my thing, or I'm an introvert, I don't really socialize with people, I find it really uncomfortable. These are things that people set up in their minds that can actually be barriers. And so when we look at the messages that we give ourselves and the stories that we tell ourselves, we have to question, what is it? What makes that true? Is that actually true? When did I start to believe and think like that? How is that impacting me? And actually, how can it be different? Can I start telling myself a different story, a different narrative that is actually going to help me invest in myself, and that's going to help me be happier, more successful in my own terms, and help me to connect to the world and to come out of this sense of negativity and feeling down and unmotivated, and overcome some of the mental health issues that people have been facing.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. I'm really, really grateful for your comment that, of course, we can give, these pieces of advice, do that, go for this. However, as long as we don't change the story, as we don't change the narrative, as you have said, and also our own perception, it will be really, really hard to change our habits.
Yeah.
I'm asking all my guests also about this one magic word, so to say. What was the word that was supportive for you during this time, for you personally?
Yeah.
And what is the story behind?
For me, I think the word has to be connection. Connection means a lot to me because I'm a twin. And being a twin is a very unique experience. It's that level of understanding that you have with another human being where you feel totally understood and supported. And for me, that's something I've had throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And when the pandemic hit, I realized that sense of having somebody support you is really important, not just for me, but for everybody in life. That we don't exist as individual separate beings in terms of how we interact in the world. That we need to have that sense of feeling validated, that being visible. And when we're going through difficult times, to have people there for us that understand what we're going through. And not to have that for me during the pandemic really hit me very hard, because I actually thought I was a very independent person, that I didn't really need other people around me. I was quite happy by myself, I have so many interests, so many things to do. I'm never bored. And then the pandemic hit and I realized I need to have people that I care about share in what I'm going through, and I need to understand what they're going through and be there for them. And that's when I had a huge sense of feeling alone. And for a twin, that's quite a rare feeling, to have a sense of loneliness. And so coming out of that, I think that I've realized that I have to invest more in my relationships with the people that I love, that I want to be able to be more sociable in my connection to people, because I've realized now that it's more important than I actually thought it was before the pandemic.
Wow, very powerful. Very, very powerful. So when I listen to you, I immediately have this, metaphor in front of my eyes that all of us, we are connected, and it's like trees are connected with the roots under the earth. We don't see it, but still this connection exists. And when we are in this tough situation, it has got also impact on our mental health, definitely. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of people's mental health have been affected by the pandemic, mine included, in a way that I never thought that it would be. It took a long time for me to realize what was going on for me in terms of feeling really low in mood, lacking motivation, feeling negative about the world and being disconnected. And I think a lot of people went through that in the pandemic, especially when they had loved ones that were sick and ill and weren't able to see them. This caused a huge amount of stress and anxiety and uncertainty for people. And coming out of that, people have learned how important it is to have the structures and to invest in people that they care about and in the work that they care about as well. And we see that being played out with people making different choices about whether they want to continue in the work that they're doing or whether they want to go in a different direction. Yeah. I think that when you're feeling disconnected, you can fall into a cycle of negativity and become demotivated and not have much energy. And then it makes it even harder for you to reach out. And also people feel embarrassed as well, that that's the way that they feel. And so I think what's important is for people to acknowledge that it's quite a natural reaction and not to beat themselves up about it, and to be able to reach out to people, friends, neighbours, professionals, and people within their community, and to become more interactive.
Yeah. Yes, Caroline, thank you so much. Thank you for all your sharings, for all your inspirations. And I wish you that you can promote this connection between the mental health, diversity, inclusion, even more. Also, not only face-to-face, but of course in this virtual world, which is a little bit tricky. However, it's possible.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Thank you very much.